The Donetsk direction still remains the top priority for the Russian army. They have concentrated most of their forces here and continue to systematically advance on Ukrainian positions. At the same time, these positions are the most fortified, and the Ukrainians have held them since 2014 and are not planning to retreat from their land. The Russians were given a very warm welcome, with heavy fire from artillery and FPV drones. From the very first hours of the offensive, the Russians began to suffer irrecoverable losses of equipment one after another. Despite added anti-drone armor, kamikaze drones still remain the most effective method for destroying enemy equipment. And while the first hit IFV is still burning out, Ukrainian drone pilots are already hunting its companions that tried to hide among the ruins of the nearby village. This armored equipment has also been damaged, so they are unlikely to be able to quickly leave the danger zone. The only hope is to rapidly deploy infantry to a location where they can take up defensive positions. In the meantime, the pilots came across an already abandoned armored vehicle. Its counterpart tried to hide among the trees, but quickly realized that this plan wouldn't work, and despite the damage, still attempted to escape the battlefield. Another precise strike completely disables the vehicle, but even without this hit, the armored personnel carrier wouldn't have been able to move further, as the road was already blocked by another destroyed fleeing vehicle. When the Ukrainian FPV drones flew in closer, the vehicle was already burning, and all that remained for them was to spectacularly finish what their colleagues had started. The Russians additionally deployed a Mi-8 helicopter. It was meant to support the tank assault and, if possible, suppress the nest of Ukrainian FPV drone operators. And at the very moment when one of the Ukrainian pilots was searching for a target, he spotted this highly attractive one and took full advantage of the opportunity. The FPV drone struck directly into the fuel tank, and the burning helicopter immediately began to lose altitude rapidly. The Russian pilot seemed to be trying to maintain control until the very end of the fall, but the outcome of this flight was already obvious. Give a thumbs up to the Ukrainian pilot for his quick reaction and rare catch. Ukrainians have practically trapped the enemy and continue to strike from all sides, driving them further into despair and panic. The only option left for the survivors is simply to flee and try to find a place where they can safely hide and wait for reinforcements or evacuation. A successful offensive can already be forgotten. It went off plan at the very first stages. Yet, despite the heavy Ukrainian fire and the destruction of their equipment, a large number of Russian soldiers still managed to survive. They quickly began descending into basements and hiding behind the rubble, hoping that FPV wouldn't be able to reach them there. The Russians quickly shift tactics from offense to defense and adapt to changes on the battlefield. But the Ukrainians aren't sitting idly either. To get at soldiers who fled, they are dispatching, alongside regular FPV crews, drones equipped to drop munitions to reach the enemy underground. By launching drones one after another, the Ukrainians managed to destroy a significant portion of the Russian soldiers. But many of them still managed to hide among the ruins and are sitting very quietly, not revealing their positions. If reinforcements arrive, the situation could change drastically. Ukrainians take a risky step. Knowing that the enemy's equipment has been destroyed and that the Russian soldiers do not have enough weapons to hold an effective defense, the Ukrainians send 2 T-72 tanks to clear the area. They pull up right to the enemy position and begin to lay down heavy concentrated fire to destroy it. The houses that served as temporary shelters for the Russians are blown to pieces. The chance of survival for those who were inside or near them is practically zero. The Ukrainians managed to destroy most of the Russian soldiers just before their reinforcements could arrive. One of the Russian drones even managed to strike the tank's hull, but the armor withstood the explosion admirably. After successfully completing the mission, the tanks quickly leave the positions before other enemy crews could approach and start hunting the Ukrainians. This Ukrainian crew was very lucky. A Russian FPV drone that crashed directly into the vehicle's windshield, for some reason, did not explode. Only the glass was damaged. And in this footage, we can see a Russian FPV pilot slightly missing, allowing the Ukrainians to avoid serious damage. But you can't always rely on luck. In war, fortune smiles not only on the brave, but also on those with good skills. This time, a Ukrainian military group spotted the drone before it could get close enough to strike. They stopped and began shooting it down with their rifles. A masterful shot. The group quickly returns to the vehicle and flees. This time, a skilled shooter managed to save the lives of the entire crew. And this Ukrainian soldier even managed to destroy a drone while on the move. It's somewhat easier to shoot down FPV drones with a shotgun, but that's still an extremely difficult task. In this video, the soldier needed 6 shots to finally destroy the drone. One might think this is just great luck, but as we said earlier, it's the result of persistent training. Examples of similar Ukrainian training operations can be seen in this video. 2 mobile groups are preparing to negotiate an obstacle course on quad bikes. The mission is to reach the point and seize and hold one of the positions. Although this is only a training exercise, they are subjected to intense simulated fire using explosives. But the training wouldn't be realistic if one of its components didn't include defense against kamikaze drones. Of course, the drone is only a dummy and does not carry real explosives. However, to learn how to shoot down moving targets, it's not necessary to use live munitions. While the second group is conducting the landing, a soldier from the first group covers them, trying to shoot down the drone with a rifle, and he succeeds. Everyone understands that in real combat, this will be several times more difficult. But whereas at the start of the war, shooting down drones with small arms was rare, it has now become part of the everyday routine for soldiers on the front line. But have solutions for more effective neutralization of drones in combat conditions really still not been found. Searches and experiments are carried out daily. One countermeasure, for example, is a pistol that fires a net. Unlike bullets, the net has a much larger area of effect and effectively tangles the drone's propellers. It would seem like an ideal solution, but it has a major drawback: its firing range. Therefore, this type of drone defense is very risky. You have one chance, only one shot, and if you miss, the result will be fatal. The Russians decided that the morning fog and smoke would help mask their offensive and buy them some extra time. The armored column even managed to get close to the nearest village and began splitting into smaller groups.
Друже, дай доповідь, що у вас по обстановці?
Ukrainian reconnaissance spotted the Russians already approaching the ruins and quickly began sending groups of drones there to neutralize the enemy before they could reach the defensive line. Once the Russians began losing their first armored vehicles, the decision was made to disperse in different directions and, if possible, occupy safer positions in the village, where it would be much easier to conduct the defense. But they still need to make it to the village, and doing so under heavy drone attack is not easy. Yes, the Russians managed to buy some time and approach unnoticed to a certain distance, but they were spotted in time, and the number of drones will only increase. Even when part of the Russian military equipment managed to reach the nearest roads, and a chance appeared to escape the fire, the shelling only intensified, and they began rapidly losing armored vehicles and tanks. Thanks to additional anti-drone armor, most of the Russian armored vehicles managed to withstand the first hits to their hulls and kept moving. But the closer they got to the Ukrainian positions, the more accurate the strikes became. In the end, not a single vehicle from the entire column remained intact. The last 2 APCs with their crews turned around and even began to retreat in the opposite direction, realizing that this offensive had failed. But there, they were met with an explosive surprise. The Ukrainian FPV operator managed to hit a vulnerable spot. and the first APC exploded instantly, blocking the road for its counterpart. And while the surviving Russians were still deciding what to do next, another wave of drones had already closed in to strike and effectively shattered their plans. After that, the only option left for the Russian soldiers who somehow managed to survive was to flee. The nearest shelter they could find were the ruins of houses in a nearby village. But even there, they failed to hide. On the contrary, by revealing their positions, they became an easy target for Ukrainian pilots. And within just a few hours, there was no trace left of the large-scale Russian offensive. And although in the video it may seem that being a drone pilot is very easy, in reality, it is a very difficult and dangerous job that definitely deserves a thumbs up from you. Although news about HIMARS doesn't appear in the media as often as at the start of the full-scale invasion, these MLRS continue to systematically destroy the enemy and work for Ukraine's victory. This time, the Ukrainian reconnaissance drone Shark is hunting a rare target. Russia doesn't have many MLRS left, so each of them is used only in the deep rear and is not easy to reach. HIMARS is exactly the system suited for such cases. This time, the Ukrainians missed slightly, and the Russian MLRS managed to hide in a forest belt. It only sustained minor damage and was back in action the very next day. But the Ukrainians couldn't just let this target go. On the second attempt, they hit it right on target. It didn't take long for the ammunition to explode, and just a few seconds after the impact, the reconnaissance drone operators could fully enjoy a spectacular festive fireworks display. The same swift retribution caught up with another Russian MLRS in this sector. The crew didn't even have time to leave their position before a precise HIMARS strike permanently put an end to their criminal actions. After such a powerful explosion, all that remained of the vehicle was a heap of scrap metal, and this time, a truly valuable target was destroyed. Since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, more than 1,500 MLRS units have already been eliminated. To make up for the shortage, the Russians are now even resorting to using systems supplied by North Korea. These portable Type 75 MLRS may cause some trouble for the Ukrainian forces, but they are nowhere near the level of the destroyed Buk M2. After another salvo, the Russians hide it in the nearest building, but since its firing range is much shorter, they have to position it closer to the front line, and at such a distance, it can be dealt with without using HIMARS, cheaper and more effectively. With just one drone, a North Korean MLRS and its ammunition were completely destroyed. The Russians who managed to survive quickly search for new shelter from drones. But this time, luck is not on their side. Maybe someone will survive after a drone flew straight into their hideout. But the chances are extremely small. And to make those chances even smaller, the Ukrainians launched several more drones, ultimately destroying the fortifications.